Today we're going to be editing this white bunny. His name is Macaroon. This is actually my third shoot with Macaroon. It looks like this photo got overexposed because of the flash and because he's white. But thankfully, when I turn on my over and underexposure overlay with the J key, I do not see any issues. I think we did manage to capture everything in this photograph. At one point, he did actually end up peeing during this shoot. So it was not a particularly smooth photo shoot, but we got this photo that we could work with. I'm going to go ahead and turn off that overlay. I'm going to crop in. I'm going to do that 4:5 crop to make it a consistent image with the rest of the website. And I'm going to try to figure out what is level. Clearly, I took this from an angle, so that wall is not necessarily my best guide. He's facing to the right. Bunnies are weird because their eyes are on the side of the face. So whereas we're used to wherever the nose is going, that's where they're looking. This bunny is actually looking probably at me a little bit side-eyed. Not super happy with what's going on. But here we are zoomed in, and I think that this is a good framing for this photo. Now I'm going to make sure that my white balance is right. Since he is all white and I used a flash, I'm going to go ahead and pick this point that is towards the flash. And I'm going to click that. And I think that should be a perfect white balance. So despite this yellow wall making everything wonky, thankfully I used a flash and that cleaned up a lot of the color. To check, I'm going to bring up the saturation all the way. We see a little bit of color cast on the back there from that yellow wall. And then we do see a little bit of yellow under the paws. That's not actually color cast. That is because the bunny peed during the shoot. We're going to go ahead and reset. For the most part, I think we have good white balance. I'm going to use this auto feature, and I'm really just using this to give me a starting point. It brought everything way back. This is not what the final image is going to look like, but it does give me a lot more to work with. I can see the detail now. I can see how much I want to bring it up. So I'm going to go over to the masking section, and I'm going to hit this subject mask. It did a really good job picking the bunny out. First thing I'm going to do with that is I'm going to apply this dog preset that I have. It just basically ups the contrast and the curves and all of those sorts of things. Texture, clarity, dehaze, and sharpness, as well as adjusting the curve to a medium contrast curve. The next thing is I'm going to raise the shadows a bit because this adds a little bit too much contrast for my taste. Lower the highlights. And now the image is a little bit more flat and he looks a little bit gray. So I'm going to raise the exposure and I'm going to raise it right about there. I'm actually going to decrease the saturation a bit. Raise the exposure a little bit more. When photographing light or dark animals, it's really challenging to get the exposure right on them. You want to preserve a lot of this detail. Like we could see all this fine hair on this bunny, but we also want to preserve the fact that he is a white bunny. Doesn't look like we've blown him out, but he's definitely closer to that white color he should be and that proper exposure. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the object selection tool and I'm going to get into that eye. And this is an interesting color eye. So they have this red kind of pale eye that I think it glows in the dark, which is a little bit creepy, but maybe it's cute. I'm not sure. Maybe I shouldn't be calling bunnies creepy on a channel that edits animals. Like that's what I do, but he was sweet. It's just, I don't know, glow in the dark eyes. That's creepy, man. I'm going to stop there with those sorts of edits right now. And I'm going to move this over into Photoshop because that background is hideous. And so we got to fix it. So here I am in Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and use this quick selection tool. That'll bring up this contextual menu where I can select the subject. First, I'm going to use the down caret, use the cloud detailed results, and then I will hit select subject. And that gets me this wonderful outline of this bunny. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command C, Command V, and that just pastes this onto a new layer. I'm going to hide that layer. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing again. And I'm going to invert the selection. So I'm actually selecting the background and I'm going to hit generative fill. And generally, I find it more appealing when small animals are on something. This is a weird thing for the bunny to be on, though. So that doesn't really meet that criteria. I'm not sure why it's going with these urban sort of backgrounds. So I'm going to go with on a stone. Maybe that'll get me the kind of result I'm looking for. Okay. So I think I don't really like the color in this background, but I do like this background overall. So I'm going to adjust that in Lightroom, but I'm going to stick with this. An issue that I run into frequently with generative fill is the tips of the ears. The hair that sticks out will sometimes become over accentuated. I'm going to flatten this image with all three layers visible. And now I'm going to select the remove tool and I'm going to zoom in with Command plus. I'm going to scroll on over to the ears and you can actually see this line that shows itself where the generative fill added to the bunny. So I'm going to go over that line and I'm going to try to smooth it out with this remove tool. It doesn't do the cleanest job here, but this image is going to be viewed on a website and probably on somebody's phone. Really, there are two groups of people that will be looking at this photo as closely as I am right now, and that's me and that's you. Everybody else will be looking at this on a very small screen. They'll be looking at this for probably a few seconds at most, and they will be captured more by their first impression because they're looking at the subject. They're not looking at the quality of the edit on the edges of the ears of the subject. This will be how we bond. You and me, viewer. You and me. If anybody's had any luck getting a smoother generative fill that doesn't do anything to their animals, please drop your tips in the comments below, and I will thank you in every video that I use generative fill. The edges of these toes here, there's a little bit of color fringing. I'm going to use this as a little bit of a blur. It's not really what it's supposed to do, but it works. I'm going to go with that. I'm not entirely sure if this mess is a result of generative fill or if it's a result of the bunny, but I am going to just try to make this look a little bit cleaner either way. Just trying to create that really good first impression and hopefully get this bunny to a home or to a rescue. I'm doing a quick scan of the face to make sure that there's not like eye boogers or something weird there. Looks like we're doing pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and zoom back out, take a last look, and I am done in Photoshop. So I'm gonna hit save. I go back to Lightroom and there's my new image there. So now what I want to do is I'm going to mask out the background and I am going to cool it down quite a bit. A little bit too warm for my liking and desaturate it. So I'm really just trying to take away that distraction element because this brown color is just a little bit too much. And with the bunny being white, your eye is drawn to what's going on here. So by taking out some of that saturation and that color, we end up with a much more bunny-centric photo. So I'm playing with the elements to just eliminate distraction. So now that I've masked the background and done all that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to effects. I'm going to do a post crop vignette of -15, and that's drawing the viewer's eyes towards the subject. Once again, eliminating that distracting background or mitigating it really. If I wanted to eliminate it, I would just replace it with a black backdrop. So mitigating the effect. It's still pleasing, but the attention is towards their subject, which is what we really want. And then everything else complements the subject here. Next up, the main thing I want to do with the color is I want to take the saturation of the fur, use this little picker tool, and I want it to be completely white, or I want it pretty close to white. So that took a little bit of the color out of this background here, which I actually think I am okay with. Yeah, I'm okay with that. And that's your bunny. Because he has been a little bit problematic. I think he's scared of the flash. He's a very good bunny, very friendly, very receptive to handling, but he doesn't seem to respond well to the flash. And then also his fur is white in this photo, but the original intake photo, he has this brown fur on it. So somebody actually dyed him. He may have been a show rabbit in a former life. And the fur clumps whenever you dye them, and it's very uncomfortable for them. So the caretaker or the volunteer who handled him actually had to clip back the fur. This is about 8 weeks of her doing that and getting that growth back so that way the bunny can actually go back to its original color and be a white bunny. Very clearly, you can tell that it's a white bunny from that specific eye color there. That is a dead giveaway that is that albino type rabbit.